Thanks for joining me in our third Congressional Western Caucus Chairman's Chat for this 118th Congress. Today, I'm delighted to have with me from the Big First District in the state of Kansas, Tracey Mann, who is, now you help me with this, you're chairman of the subcommittee in agriculture.
Yeah, so I'm on the Ag Committee, and I chair the subcommittee on livestock, dairy, and poultry, which does a lot of things. We look at animal health as a big issue, and as we know, for those who care about agriculture, we have to have a good livestock sector because livestock industry is the biggest consumer of all of our commodities.
That's right.
And so, we think about the protein that Americans eat. This subcommittee oversees that, which is why the lesser prairie chicken ruling is so damaging for so many of our livestock producers, why I care about the issue and why we're here today.
Because it impacts maybe not necessarily directly the livestock industry, but in some cases, but also those that are raising those important feedstocks for livestock.
That's exactly right. And it impacts our livestock industry directly as well.
So exactly why we wanted to talk to you. This is Species Week.
Yep.
This is the 50th year anniversary of the Endangered Species Act, since it was signed into law in 1973. I don't know if you remember where you were in 1973. I do.
Wasn't quite born yet, but I was, on the way.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about its impacts and why this is such an important topic that we're always engaged in. So just a little bit. Over that 50-year period, I should know this number. It's like 1,359 different species, plants and animals, insects, all different species, have been included on this list, and only 5% have ever come off, meaning our success rate is dismal at best. And so that's something that we're trying to point out to people, that this law, well-intentioned, an important, I think, thing for people to be concerned with is making sure that that species are protected, but obviously needs some changes.
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about maybe some of the species in your district? You mentioned one.
Yep.
And the impact it's had on those important things in agriculture.
Yeah, and Chairman, thanks for having me, and thanks for your leadership of the Western Caucus, shedding a light on this issue. So I represent the western part of Kansas, and there's a species that lives there called the lesser prairie chicken. And if you, and so the Fish and Wildlife Services in the process, or they've added it to the threatened species list. Mm-hmm. Now, there's two actual subspecies of the lesser prairie chicken. The one in Kansas is in western Kansas, eastern Colorado, Oklahoma Panhandle, and part of West Texas. There's another subspecies, very similar, that's farther southwest. It's in New Mexico and Texas, and it's actually been added to the endangered species list.
Oh, two.
So there's two, but here's the problem. This is a species that I know scores of people that have lived in southwestern Kansas their entire life. They've never seen a lesser prairie chicken.
Oh, is that right?
And so here they're adding it to the list, and it's very detrimental for our oil and gas industry as they are trying to open up new lands for drilling, but also our ag producers. So I heard from an ag producer this week that's in Morton County, Kansas, which is as far south and west in Kansas as you can get. Somebody saw a lesser prairie chicken in their pasture. They have 17 pastures, and so now they had to move all the cattle out of the pasture that they saw the lesser prairie chicken in, and the two adjoining pastures. So there's 3 pastures they had to vacate that they can't use because somebody saw a lesser prairie chicken. Makes no sense. When you look at the population of lesser prairie chicken, it really mirrors rainfall. We're in a dire drought, and so the population is down. Guarantee you, it starts raining again, the population is going to be up. So why are we adding all these burdensome regulations as part of a flawed process to get them on the list in the first place? Very frustrating.
It won't make any difference, likely.
Correct. Yeah.
So I've been to your district. I've been to western Kansas. Beautiful place. I love the agriculture there. Everywhere you look, there's agriculture.
Sure.
So over the 5 decades of the ESA, our observation has been that the ESA has many times is being, let me use the word weaponized.
That's right.
Used as a tool to either inhibit, slow down, or actually stop activities, whether it's like you mentioned some of the oil and gas efforts, agricultural efforts. Is there anything that you could point to that you've been working on in your committee or otherwise that maybe could put some balance into this process to lessen the weaponization of the ESA?
Absolutely. There are a lot of things we're looking at. And I think, look no further to the flawed process, I would say, that this came about. So, Obama tried to roll out these regulations. Trump rolled them back. Biden, of course, is rolling them back through again. So this has been a topic of discussion for the last decade.
Yeah.
We have called upon the administration to be much more forthright with the data that they're using to justify the decision, the process. They've been unwilling to do that. And I just think if you're going to make these sweeping decisions, at the very least, you need to be upfront and open with the process, with the data. They've been unwilling to do that. I introduced a CRA to strike down the regulation. The identical CRA passed the Senate. Senator Roger Marshall from Kansas,
awesome.
Coast Marshall, that's passed the Senate. Our legislation has passed the Natural Resources Committee. Hopefully it's going to go to the floor next week.
Good.
But this is a clear example of federal government overreach as part of as part of this bigger effort, and ours specifically is the lesser prairie chicken.
Well, certainly we need some transparency in the whole process. So Species Week, looking for improvements. I look forward to continuing to work with you through the Western Caucus and the Agriculture Committee and your subcommittee. Before we end today's chairman's chat, any words that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I would just say this is why the Western Caucus is so important, to highlight and shed a light on these things that are happening all over, western part of our country, all over rural America. And I think our voters and the citizens want us to do better. And animal agriculture as we know it, and the oil and gas industry as we know it, is at stake.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's great. Well, there you have it. Tracey Mann from the Big First of the great state of Kansas. Thank you for being with us on Congressional Western Caucus Chairman's Chat. Thank you, Tracey.
Thank you for having me. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.